Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Doesn't Make Sense. It's a show where me and John talk about pro wrestling and whether or not it makes sense. Most of the time, it doesn't. It gives us plenty of stuff to talk about. We were going to do a review of Money in the Bank that was on last week, but we just couldn't be bothered. It was all right. There was no, or there was very little supernatural spookiness going on. Although at one point, Alexa Bliss did try to beckon the Money in the Bank contract down with her magical powers.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. Did she mind control someone as well?
Yeah, how does that work? Like, what, she seems a little bit like she seems like Apocalypse. You're like, what exactly does she do? Does she do everything?
Yeah.
Just have all the power? She can do everything?
I guess
a little bit. It's a little overkill, don't you think?
Yeah.
To just let Alexa Bliss have all the magic, that's not fair. Nobody else is gonna win. Although her magic didn't win out at all, as she was beaten by somebody who confesses to having no superpowers whatsoever, Nikki Cross. But she tries, and you see that the power of trying is better than the power of using magic. There you go. It's a life lesson for all you kids out there. Although I don't know why you're listening to this show, because we swear a lot. You kids shouldn't be listening to this show. Anyway, forget Money in the Bank. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about stuff that's more recent and relevant these days. A lot of the wrestling world is talking about the rumors / apparently confirmed signings to AEW of CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, I suppose we're gonna have to start calling him now.
Mm-hmm.
So these are apparently confirmed.
Well, Daniel Bryan sounds like he's pretty much confirmed, whereas at last I heard Punk and AEW are still negotiating, but it sounds like it's pretty much a done deal.
So you're pretty certain they're both gonna turn up at some point in the next couple of months in AEW.
Oh, yeah, I'm so certain. I kind of have a good guess of when they're going to turn up as well.
Yeah, so do a lot of people.
Yeah.
One may suggest or suspect that Tony Khan has let everybody else see his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe on purpose. Right?
Well, yeah, to create a bit of buzz.
Right. No, what if, hypothetically, he has not signed CM Punk or Bryan Danielson, and then these shows go on ahead in, what is one, New York, and the other one's in Chicago?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that would be pretty poor form, don't you think? Like, if you're going to put it out there that you've got these two big name signings showing up in the near future and don't deliver, that's probably going to piss off a lot of people.
Well, they didn't. Tony Khan didn't say CM Punk and Bryan Danielson are definitely coming in, did he? I don't think he did.
No, they've all been very coy about it when they've been asked.
Exactly. So if they didn't have them signed, they can go, I don't know why you guys get your hopes up for no reason. Although they do this every year with the CM Punk. Remember? It was last year and even the year before where CM Punk had been rumored to sign with AEW. And I find it interesting that it seems to be the year that he finally does. Why might that be?
Well, I guess because maybe it's the fact he's getting on in years, 42. If he is going to make a comeback to wrestling, he's kind of got to do it, now. But at the same time, like, he's not actually wrestled for, going on, like, 8 years now or something like that?
Yeah.
7 years, maybe. I can't remember. But either way.
I think he left in 2013 or 14.
Yeah.
I think 14.
It was early, whichever year it was anyway. So it's been a long, long time. And for someone who prided himself on being the best in the world, it's asking a lot for him to come back and be at that high level again. So even, signing CM Punk, are you getting the same CM Punk who was around a decade ago? Or is this just, sort of
another
a money
signing.
grabbing? Yeah.
Well, you see, you raised a very good point because the one person they want to come in and be the same guy he was 10 years ago is CM Punk. They want that guy because, like you said, they've signed CM Punk, but are they going to get the best version of CM Punk? Well, you look at some of the other recent signings they've made for the Big Show and Mark Henry, for Sting, for Christian, for who else? Andrade.
Malachi
Not even
Black.
Andrade, right? Don't the other guys I mentioned who have been with the WWE for a long time, right? Are you getting the best version of those characters? Now, for Christian, you could argue yes, because you're getting a guy who knows how to work and can still work and is working, right? But at the same time, what are they doing with him? You look at what Christian has done since he signed there. He has just worked a handful of matches with guys that he knows are going to be safe with him because he's coming back and he's still fragile, right? So that means he's just working with Frankie Kazarian or Matt Hardy or whatever, and so nothing's happening, right? So you're not getting the best version of Christian Cage because you're not really getting anything out of Christian Cage just yet, which is a damn shame. Though you look at the Big Show and Mark Henry, I don't know how well they've been doing so far, but I heard the Big Show on the first episode of whatever fucking show he does the commentary on. And hey, man, first show, not easy. You get into it. I dig that. I understand. It's a hard job doing commentary. But I didn't like it, the first one. He did, so I'm not going to tune into the other ones. And you're like, is that the best use of the Big Show? I honest to God, don't think so. Right? You look at all these guys that they've signed up, Sting and all this shit. You look at them. These are guys that they have definitely given big money contracts to because of their already established fame and notoriety, right? But they're not bringing that level of what made them famous and notorious to begin with in this new company, which I would describe as ass backwards.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the only superstar the AEW have signed who's kind of looked better in AEW than he did in WWE is probably Miro. And even then, that took like 6 months or possibly even longer for him to finally be booked right and presented in the right way and not as a goof. So, it's a pretty weird situation where they keep signing all these ex WWE names, and you can understand why they're signing them because obviously they've got name value, they are talented at what they do, but again, it kind of boils down to how they're used and how they're booked and getting the best use out of them.
And I don't think that they are getting the best use out of a lot of these guys. They just have them to have them, right? And that's fine and that's nice. But it's kind of also like a waste of money, right? And this is what I mean. Like if you are CM Punk and you look at this guy who a year and a half ago offered you fucking $5 million a year, right? You said no because I want to have my own creative direction. I want more money than that. I don't want to, yada yada. He has his own list of fucking demands that he wants, right? So why a year and a half later, when they've already spent so much money on guaranteed contracts, and we've already seen the way that they've used these bigger names, not utilizing them to their best potential? After having seen the results, after having seen a year and a half of a schizophrenic TV show, and like on and off again booking, and all of this stuff, why now would CM Punk look at this and go, this is it. This is the time. Because, now he has to, because now if he has creative control over his booking, then great. We have a great, good, logical storyline. But what about the rest of the show? Right? Well, is CM Punk going to come in and like totally fucking dismantle the Dark Order or whatever? You know what I mean? Is he going to come in and go, all right, now the women's division's fixed? Him coming in isn't going to right the ship.
No, it's not a magic wand that's going to fix all the problems.
Yes, well, I should make it clear that a lot of people don't think that there are a whole lot of problems in AEW and that the ship isn't sinking. Fair enough. This is my opinion, and I'm happy enough to talk about it. But I feel like there are booking problems with that show. And I've already mentioned the handful of old WWE guys who come in and not been used to their full potential. You mentioned Miro. It took him more than 6 months to be an unstoppable monster, even though a child could have told you that was a good idea, right? It's like, do you want to come in as a fucking monster and be used the way the WWE didn't use you? Or do you want to come in as a tag team partner of this fucking guy and be used the way the WWE were going to use you? You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know exactly what I mean. Like this, how is that any different from any of the other bullshit that WWE does? No, it's the same fucking shit. So if CM Punk didn't want to come back to the WWE, which guarantees fucking 2 million eyeballs on you every week for a certain amount of money, like, you know, why is he going to entertain coming onto this show? This is what I don't get, right? The Danny Bryan thing, I totally get, because he loves wrestling, he loves working, and he has that silly kind of goofball-y mentality to him, right? You've probably seen or heard some of the stuff Danny Bryan's done in the indies. He's not always 100% like a serious shoot wrestler, you know?
No.
He's done an awful lot of funny, silly garbage, right?
Yeah, even in WWE, he did that sort of stuff as well.
Exactly. So now, if they let him come into this company, it's pretty likely that Bryan himself isn't going to say, I want to go straight to the top and win the belt, right? I can see Danny Bryan coming in just to have some fun, just to wrestle and work and to just mess around, right?
Well, and just have like a fresh batch of opponents as well, like guys that he hasn't wrestled before or that he feels like he can help develop and pass on his knowledge to, because, you know, he said himself he's sort of in that situation where he is starting to wind down a little bit now, where you know, wrestling isn't the top priority in his life anymore, but it's still something he really enjoys doing and wants to do for as long as possible. But, you know, he doesn't want to go out there and punish himself like he was doing 20 years ago. So,
but you don't think that like getting in the ring with a bunch of green guys isn't gonna fucking you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
either he gets in the ring with all these green guys, or they just use him the way they use Christian Cage, which is to work with the already established people they know aren't gonna fuck anything up, which defeats the purpose.
Yeah, but again, like, I think Daniel Bryan's the kind of guy as well who just wants a new challenge. And after being in WWE for so long and doing everything that he could possibly do there, you know, this probably seems like a good idea and a new way to kind of reinvigorate his love for wrestling in a way, I guess.
Yeah. So like that's why I totally get the Daniel Bryan thing, right? Plus they can probably offer him a contract that lets him work AEW, but also lets him work on the Indies or in Ring of Honor or wherever the fuck. Because I think that honestly, he should just go back to Ring of Honor, right? But I can see Tony Khan working out a deal where he can kind of go and work a bunch of those other shows, right? I can see that, and that's perfect for Daniel Bryan. That's what I mean. I can see Daniel Bryan going through this, but I just don't see CM Punk doing it, you know? I just don't see it. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. Hardly going to be the last time. But I just I don't see it. He can do whatever else he wants to do. You know, he's in films now. He could write some more comic books. He could just not do anything. Well, I think he has been doing, you know.
To be fair, he's in sort of low budget films where he's probably not getting paid a lot, and I think his comic book work is pretty much dried up now. I'm sure he hasn't really written anything for Marvel for a good few years. So maybe it is like a case of, you know, he needs to do something while he still can. And he can probably get paid a shit ton of money for wrestling, even doing like a limited schedule and whatnot. So why not return and try and capitalize on that whilst he still can? But I don't know. I kind of get your doubts when it comes to CM Punk, because he's always come across, ever since he walked out on WWE, like as someone who just walk away from wrestling and, you know, not look back. So it just feels kind of weird that after all this time he is, you know, supposedly considering this comeback.
Well, Well, that's the thing, though. That's still the thing. It's been pretty much set in stone, right? The Daniel Bryan Stephanie coming in, but the CM Punk stuff is still in talks.
Yes.
Which you could say they've been in talks for a year and a half. So I just don't get why suddenly people are like, is Stephanie going to be CM Punk? I'm like, well, I don't know. That's what I'm going to say. I don't know. How could I possibly know?
I think as like one of the other AEW talents, like someone who's been there for a while, say, or like a young guy who's, been around since the beginning and was kind of given all these promises of, being, given opportunities and whatnot. It's kind of getting to the point where with all these ex-WWE guys showing up, and then you get big names like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan as well, and then all of a sudden it feels like, the show becomes more about these guys. And let's face it, AEW already has a problem kind of fitting in people on the show anyway, where they just try and put people into massive groups and they get lost in the shuffle. And then, you have like pretty much every match has, a shit ton of interference and whatnot.
Some kind of bullshit at the end or at the
beginning.
beginning.
I mean, it's just I kind of appreciate the idea of wanting to give everyone a bit of TV time, but the minuscule amount that they get given accomplishes nothing. Like no one gets over from like some bullshit run-in. So I mean,
you would think.
Well, yeah, you'd think, but it's so like when you see someone, guys like Punk and I should start calling him Bryan Danielson, but coming in and then taking up that TV time again, and like on top of everyone else, it's just like, man, that's got to be really disheartening in a way.
Yeah.
As cool as it is to share a locker room with those guys, still, you want to be like a success yourself as well, surely.
Well, first of all, you could probably just call him Bryan and get away with it both ways, That's sweet. But second of all, wasn't it CM Punk that complained about The Rock coming in and taking his spot at WrestleMania?
That's true, yeah.
Is CM Punk going to be the guy that comes in and takes fucking...
Adam Page's...
Yeah, well, it's not going to be Adam
run.
Page. But it seems like they're set on doing this Adam Page versus Kenny Omega thing, which I think would have been a great idea had they not totally bungled the booking of it for the last 6 months.
Well, this is remarkable, though, because, like, even with the fact that they basically forgot Adam Page existed on Dynamite for a long time, he is super over still. The last couple of weeks with the fans back in attendance, he's been the most over guy on the show. So,
isn't that strange?
Yeah.
How does that work?
I'm putting it down to a testament to Adam Page being really, really good rather than the booking. But
well, exactly, it's not the booking. I think it's a testament to the fans, right? They just want to see Adam Page is one of the guys that came in at the very beginning of the company that everybody had high hopes for.
Yeah,
right, him and then MJF, they're like, these guys are going to be pretty good. So they react really well whenever MJF comes out because he's really good at what he does. But whenever Hangman Page comes out, they're excited to see him because they want him to be one of their guys. Right?
Yeah.
They're happy to see him, but like, they can't be cheering because of the way he's been booked, because that doesn't make any sense. But apparently, right? And again, AEW fans, let me know about this, because there's like a thing. Apparently, you know how they always talk about long-term booking. Well, this Adam Page thing is part of their long-term booking. And yes. Right?
Right.
You're like, what? It's because Hangman Page, it's really complicated, and it like kind of makes sense if it was a novel. Do you know what I mean?
In fact, I read a Twitter thread detailing it the other week, and like it kind of, when I read that, it was like, oh, this almost makes sense. But it didn't feel like what I've watched on TV though.
Exactly. It makes sense from like a literary, when you see it written down on Twitter like that, you're like, oh, that makes sense. But if you watch the show, you're like, that's not at all the way it comes off.
Yeah.
That's not what this fucking storyline is at all. It's so strange. And so yet beside all of that, they seem to have positioned Adam Page as their guy. So I feel like they're going to stick with that because that's part of their long-term booking, and they're going to, like, it's going to prove how much of a booking genius. Tony Khan's going to win it for 2 years in a row because he's a booking genius. He's going to win Booker of the Year to 2021 because of how he did the Adam Page thing, obviously.
Yeah, I
It
guess
all makes
so.
sense. He lost the match, so he got drunk. Doesn't that sound like the kind of guy you want to root for? And then he kept losing, so he got even drunker, and then started hanging out with a bunch of losers. I like this guy. Gotta root for this guy. I mean, like, do you think that's why they've made Kenny Omega so fucking, like, unbearably obnoxious? Because, because that way, no matter how badly they book Hangman Adam Page, if you put Hangman Adam Page beside Kenny Omega with his horrible overacting and his just like goofy bullshit, Page still looks great. You know
I
what I
reckon
mean?
so, yeah, because like I guess you could say they've tried to humanize Adam Page and make him relatable by having him, hang out with losers and and have a bit of a drinking problem and everything like that. So he's like the everyman, whereas
Kenny
Kenny
Omega is some
Omega,
fucking like Batman villain from the 60s.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
He's like some kind of inhuman like comic creation.
Mm-hmm.
It's so strange.
Yeah.
And CM Punk's gonna come in and go, yeah, but I can take charge of this. You know what I mean? So I feel like Adam Page, despite whatever the company has tried to do in derailing that boy, they're still gonna keep him directly on the warpath and gunning for Kenny Omega, because it seems like that's what they're aiming for. And what's stupid is it seems like that was what they were always aiming for. Like right when Omega won the belt, we all knew it was going to be Omega versus Hangman Page. And once again, they didn't have to do a whole lot to build that match up to get people interested in it, right? But instead of that, they fucking just balls it up completely, and then they've dragged it out like a long way to this point for having no proper storyline.
Well, I mean,
to me, I feel like the only proper build-up they've done is just having a big space in between where they split up as a team and where they fight. Like that's the only fucking thing I can see.
Exactly. The story is built in from the fact that they teamed together and they lost the titles, and then Kenny Omega beat Adam Page in the #1 contenders tournament to earn the shot at the title, which he then won. So like that's all fine and dandy, but it's just like the in-between stuff, like you say, like the space between where they didn't really do anything with Adam Page for so long. And whilst Kenny Omega was bumming around with John Moxley for literally 6 months, and it's just like, oh geez, they kind of really badly dropped the ball there and thought because Kenny Omega was going off to Impact and winning other titles elsewhere, that would kind of make up for it. But
that'll fix it.
Oh geez, yeah.
Why didn't they have Hangman Page go and win the Impact belt?
That would have been
then
interesting.
Kenny Omega has the AEW belt, and then there's a conflict right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow, how long did that take? I mean, I didn't sit and think about that. That came out on the show. Easy. Is Tony Khan? You gotta stop. We're giving you the shit for free, dude. You're gonna have to start paying us. I mean, you're paying fucking everybody else. Good God. But it means that whenever this Kenny Omega Hangman Page match happens and Hangman Page wins, which should be what, a couple of months?
Well,
the end of
August? All Out, yeah, in the beginning of September.
All right, so like almost a month away. After that, that's when you want to start seeing what the main event scene looks like, right? Because if Hangman Page is your champion, logically, who is going to be the one to fight him?
MJF.
Okay. And do you think MJF's going to win?
I think MJF will be the guy who beats Adam Page for the title. So I don't think they'll rush straight into that feud, but I think...
Oh, yeah. You want to take your time with something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
MJF joins the Dark Order.
Yeah.
And then he becomes a leader of the Dark Order, and and then there's 2 Dark Orders.
Oh, wow.
Well, wouldn't that be a great storyline?
Uh,
And then the 2 factions like have a big fight for like way too long. They have a
oh
blood and
God.
guts match.
No.
So that's too far. The blood and guts match is too much.
Well, you know, if you're gonna do a blood and guts match, you have to have it as the first match in the feud.
Yes, you have to have Chris Jericho in it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't make sense like Chris Jericho.
Make sure you stock up on crash pads as well, just in case you need them.
Oh boy. But our original point that was buried somewhere behind 20 minutes of nonsensical chatter was that if you think about Punk and Bryan coming in, this seems like great news to some people. But if you look at guys like Andrade or Aleister Black, Tommy End, Malachi Black, whatever you want to call them, these guys came into the AEW because they weren't getting a fair shot on WWE. They wanted to go and wrestle and get some TV time and get paid doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now here they are. They're in AEW. They finally get a shot. And then 2 weeks after these guys arrive, rumors start popping up about Bryan and Punk turning up. So if Punk and Bryan do turn up, what's going to happen to these guys? How long is it before they're going to be on YouTube and not on TV? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that sucks because they came there specifically to get the break, like Miro, to get the break that they weren't being given in the WWE. Although I would like to counter that by saying they put Miro on TV all the time in the WWE. You know, I suggest that maybe the reason Miro didn't get properly over in the WWE is because he didn't listen to what they were telling him to do. That's what I suspect. But they kept him on TV a lot. They were always pushing him, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to Andrade or Aleister Black, who are having a really tough time getting on TV and getting in consistent storylines, right? So now they've come to this new company to try and get that, and all anybody can talk about is 2 other guys. Like, that must suck for them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you get when you constantly have, oh, there's going to be a big special announcement next week. Oh, wow, got some big things lined up in the pipeline. Blah, blah. By the way, this fucking, how it feels like every week there's a special announcement. Doesn't it?
Yeah, I think there's supposed to be one this week from Tony Khan about some sort of live event that's coming up. So by the time this show goes out,
We'll already know what it is.
Yeah.
Dixie Carter used to have a special announcement every week on
Mm-hmm.
Impact. Tune in next week for a special announcement. And it didn't take very long for people to go, I don't think these are special announcements at all. I think these are regular announcements.
Mm-hmm.
Could have just said them and nobody would have give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, what special announcement could he possibly have to break if he's talking about going on tour? You know what I mean? Is he going to reveal the date for a pay-per-view? Because that's not a special announcement. That's the kind of announcement you're supposed to make. If you don't announce it, then nobody will go. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a special announcement, god damn it. But I guess that's just me being picky with semantics, you know. But our point, of course, stays true in that what exactly are these other guys gonna do? How quick, given how patchy they've been at actually making their own stars, right? And I mean properly pushing people. Like we've already established, the bullshit with Hangman Page for like 6 months doesn't count as pushing anybody. I mean, I will argue with you till you're blue in the face, but he has not been pushed for the last 6 months, right?
But the thing is, he hasn't been, but he's still massively over despite it. So
yes, which means that they're idiots for not pushing him because he's super over.
Mm-hmm.
Do something with this fucking guy, right? But if you had Stone Cold Steve Austin on your show and you just had him slumming out with the oddities for 6 months, how stupid! And then after 6 months, if that crowd still loved him, you would be like, what else do I got to do to bury this guy? Right? Because the only reason you would do that is to bury him. You wouldn't do that to push him. You wouldn't do that if this is your fucking main event guy. It's so ass backwards. So how quickly is Andrade going to get there? Right? And it sucks. They just introduced fucking Chavo Guerrero to be his manager. which works way better than Vicky Guerrero.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, oh hell yeah. Chavo Guerrero and Andrade together would look really cool. I think that looks way better than Vicky Guerrero. Plus, isn't Vicky Guerrero already looking after Nyla Rose? Does Vicky Guerrero need her own stable? I don't think so.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Like, I think Chavo and Andrade together can look really cool. It's a really, I think that's a really good idea, right? And I love me some Chavo Guerrero. But now that they've done that seems like a big significant change to his character, and you would think would be beneficial for more eyes on him and a bigger push and stuff. But like, if you have Daniel Bryan in here, like I said, I feel like Daniel Bryan's probably gonna want to not go straight for the main title, just kind of be on the show and have fun with people, right? But is that gonna benefit a guy like Andrade?
I mean, if they have good matches, which I'm sure they would, then it should, in theory, benefit both of them.
Yeah, but if they have these good matches buried on YouTube or like in the middle of their TV show instead of like on the pay-per-view, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a booking thing.
Yeah, I think. Well, it really depends on how they want to use Daniel Bryan. I think because I think he probably wants to go to AEW to have the kind of matches that he wasn't necessarily allowed to have in the WWE format, where it's all done by ad breaks and stuff, and you end up losing half the match and blah blah blah.
Like that doesn't happen to AEW when they go to picture in a fucking hardcore match or whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, they tend to have longer matches on Dynamite than they do on Raw and SmackDown. Is the point I was trying to make. But I think that's probably something that appeals to him, that he can just wrestle longer and tell more of a story in the ring. So I think that's probably more important to him than wrestling on every show, or how high up the card his matches are or whatever. So is that the best use of him though? I don't know, but exactly. I mean, it's probably what he wants at this stage of his career, I imagine.
Well, this is what I was gonna kind of try and lead into, okay? Because guys like Tommy Black, oh yeah, and Aleister Black, Malachi Black, and Andrade are like great, mid-carder, upper mid-carders, right? You can build on them, you can work with them. Whereas Daniel Bryan and CM Punk are like names, right? They're big names in the wrestling business. But here's what I'm trying to segue to, is that AEW, I gotta say recently, they've been doing a pretty good job with their numbers. Since they've gone back on the road, they've done a pretty good job with getting those consistent numbers again. So fair play. But I still don't think that they're growing their brand. I don't think they have. But if you watch the show, it doesn't seem like they have any intention of growing their brand or making new viewers. It all makes, like we said about that Dark Order thing with Hangman Page. It doesn't make any sense to you and me. But people who watch that show regularly get it. They understand it. Right? But if you're just a regular casual viewer or somebody who likes wrestling and tries to watch that show, you won't get it. And it won't make any sense to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't like watching wrestling at all, I can't see that show being the one that gets you into it, because it's very fast paced and not a whole lot of stuff makes sense in it. And again, the matches are fun to watch and people dig that kind of it, but I don't think that the casual viewer or people who don't watch wrestling are going to be interested in that show. So they don't seem to be doing a very good job of expanding their audience, which they need to do. They've had, it seems, honest to God, it seems like they've had pretty much the same core audience for their entire run, right?
Yeah,
which is pretty cool and it's pretty dedicated. But like, how long is that going to run for? And bringing in Punk and Bryan, God bless them, I don't think that that's going to be the thing that changes the needle.
Well, I mean, the show last week was apparently the third best viewership in Dynamite history. So, it shows they are making some progress, I guess, and you can't ignore that. But obviously, the whole move to Friday nights really fucked them up as well, and they ended up losing a good chunk of their audience, which they had to win back. And we've kind of seen them do that over the last few weeks. So you kind of think, I think there is growth there, and I think while there is still that hardcore fan base which is going to tune in every Wednesday, rain or shine, I think they are slowly but surely starting to win the more casual fans as well. And it's something that, the more they can build, the better the show will hopefully get. But I mean, you look at Raw and SmackDown, and they get, pretty much twice the numbers that Dynamite get, and they're still pretty shit shows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, more so Raw than SmackDown anyway.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I don't know, man. I think they're on the right trend, but it's a slow and steady process. Like there's not going to be that one moment like, signing Daniel Bryan or CM Punk, which is suddenly going to put them in WWE's orbit or have them get better ratings than Raw or SmackDown. It's going to be like a constant slow and steady growth over the next, few months and few years. So
right. I mean, that's exactly what it is that people are looking at the numbers now and going, oh, look at they're great, and they are pretty good, but like they're that short term numbers, right? You're right in that they still have a lot of work to do. Like the numbers now better not be anywhere close to what the number should be in 2 or 3 years time. You know what I mean? They should grow, but I don't know if they will, because like you said, what would the last week's was the third highest in the show's history, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When were the other two from?
Oh, I have no idea. You put me on the spot.
That's fair enough, but you know what I mean? Like, are these just 3 random shows? What's the contingency here? Like, what's the pattern? Was one show from last week and one show from 6 months ago? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you need to see consistent growth and consistent ratings and stuff like this. You can't go week to week because it's ridiculous. You know this. It's the ratings change based on the show the week beforehand.
Yeah.
Basically, so you don't really know that way. So I don't think that's a big deal. But I don't know. I'm interested to see where they go. I gotta say, I still think that they're not going to grow casual fans just based on the way the show is, but also based on the fact that they now or very shortly will have 4 shows to film content for. Like if you already have a small fan base and you're trying to spread that entire fan base out over 4 shows, which is going to equal how long do the YouTube shows last? Like an hour and a half, 2 hours?
Yeah, I think
Dynamite's 2 hours. Let's say hour and a half each for the YouTube show. That's 5 hours. And then the other show is what, an hour long?
Yeah, the other show is an hour long, but I think they're kind of cutting down on the YouTube show, so it's probably more like an hour rather than an hour and a half or 2 or whatever they were doing over the pandemic.
That's still gonna add up to 5 hours of wrestling per week, which is the same as watching a Raw and a SmackDown. And people, a lot of people just don't watch. It's tough to watch both Raw and SmackDown these days, given that Raw is 3 hours long. Most people just don't bother. They just watch parts of it. You know what I mean? Like, what I'd like to see, because I've seen some of the ratings for the YouTube shows, and they're not phenomenal.
No,
they're really not. So, like, a fraction of your TV audience is watching your YouTube audio or your YouTube content, which is more widely accessible. It's on the internet. It's for free. It's readily available. Whereas a TV show, you have to be watching it on TV or whatever time it's broadcast on, right? The YouTube show is on YouTube all the time for free. So, and if they're not getting super great numbers on the YouTube show, in comparison to other YouTube shows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think I said this in an episode a couple of weeks ago, but I feel like they're spreading their own fan base too thin. that there's just too much wrestling. And again, I feel like there was a point where we all could have got along with just enough wrestling. But there's no reason why WWE has to be 7 hours of wrestling per week, and then also AEW has to be 5 hours of wrestling per week. Like that's insane. That's half a day just spent watching wrestling on a week, and that's ridiculous, right? But if you had an hour of WWE and an hour of AEW and an hour of Ring of Honor, you could probably watch that. An hour of New Japan. You're like, all right, this feels better. Instead of having to watch fucking 18 hours of 2 companies. It's way too much. I think that they're oversaturating their own market, which is bizarre to me. What's the point of signing all these people if sooner or later people aren't going to see them?
Yeah.
But again, at the moment, the ratings for their main show look very strong. And I would like to point out that is because they're back on their regular Wednesday nights, and they haven't started up their second regular show yet. You know what I mean? Let's see what and again, if the ratings for the second show are similar to the first show, it's just because it's the same fan base. You know what I mean? I don't think they're growing anybody. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't. I say it a lot these days, just to really make it clear that I'm an uneducated man. But you see my point, though. I'd really like to because I don't think a lot of the ratings for the pandemic era are fair on any company.
No.
It's just, it was a shitty time for everybody. Let's all just pretend it never happened, and we'll move on with our lives, right? So I really would like to see, the kind of the ratings from now that they're back on TV, and compare that with in December after they've done a couple of big name pay-per-views and they've signed some of their big name guys, and then their second show will have been out for a couple of months as well, and we can really compare it. And then in a couple of months, okay, somebody remind us to do this in December, because we can compare the ratings for the TV shows from now till December, but we can also look at things like where Andrade is right now compared to where he could be in 6 months. If we look back from December to right now, see where Andrade went after this, or see where Miro went after his TNT title run. You know what I mean? See what happens to these guys that they seem to have big plans for, but don't really seem to know what to do with them. There's people on that show they clearly like, but they don't know what to do with them. And so they just end up spinning their wheels and doing nothing. And it's like you said, the TV time's hard to fight for. So, like, what if you start putting really good storylines on the show nobody watches? Is that going to entice people to watch the show, or is it going to mean people are going to miss important storylines, right? This is shit that they need to figure out and balance. And that's the shit that I don't think they have balanced already on their main TV show, because they're always talking about shit that happened on not even their YouTube show, but the fucking Bucks YouTube show. Like the Being Elite stuff. They're always talking about shit that happens on that. And I'm like, why not put that shit on your shows?
Yeah.
I don't get who taught any of them how to run a business. And yet, despite all of this, they're successful. This is what boggles my mind, dude. Look, I just don't understand. It's like pure force of like sheer determination. Like people just want it to be a success. And that makes me, like if you want it to be good, despite the fact that it isn't good, does that make it good?
Not really, but your powers of persuasion or self-persuasion will convince you otherwise. So
yeah,
it's pretty nuts.
Very strange. But yeah, I don't know, dude. I question CM Punk going to AEW. I understand Danny Bryan going to AEW, but I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't end up being anything super amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna be. For example, I saw some people saying it's like the NWO. It's like Hall and Nash turning up in the other company, and you're like, well, there's a big difference. There's a number. There's a significant number of differences, right? The culmination of which was the match that they have at Bash at the Beach. That's the most important part. And the way that they pulled that off, that was the NWO. and they have nothing coming close to that in AEW.
You know, you're saying all this NWO comparison. It's just got me thinking. I bet that is what Tony Khan ends up doing.
Well,
God, because he's already ripped off a bunch of other story ideas from, yesteryear. So why wouldn't he rip off the whole third man idea and then have it be a real disappointing third man show up?
did you hear that at some point Tony Khan wanted there to be he wanted somebody to come out of an egg on one of his shows?
Yeah, really?
Yeah, like the gobbledygooker.
Oh my God.
And somebody had to talk him out of it. And I'm like, oh, hey man, wonder why that one didn't work out, But think about it, dude. Okay, Hall and Nash in this scenario is going to be Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson, and Charles Montgomery Punk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these two guys turn up, and the angle, it's to see him as an allegory with the NWO, these two guys turned up from another company, and now they're in this new company, and they have a match against the regular people in that company, 3-on-3, but there's only the two of them that come out. In the world of AEW, who is the third man that turns on Team AEW to join what appears to be Team WWE, right? Because in the NWO case, I mean, honest to God, the only person that could have been was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
Right? And because that made the point. Hulk Hogan was absolutely the biggest star the WWE or WWF at the time had. And they realized he wasn't drawing them as much money as he thought he was going to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to WCW, where WCW arguably overpaid to get him because the WWE figured out he wasn't drawing in as much money. People had soured on him. So once he did his heel turn, that's when everybody got back invested. It was so wild, people didn't expect it. He was the perfect guy. All the pieces fit into place. Now, if this was AEW, who is the guy that turns on AEW to side with Punk and Bryan? Who would be the guy for that to make any sense at all and for that to be a good storyline? Because number one, it's not a good storyline because so far it's exactly the same as the NWO in this hypothetical rebooking. But you know what I mean? Who would be the guy?
There isn't one.
There is no one. Because what if Kenny Omega turns? Then who cares? Because he's already turned his back on AEW, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Has he? Because nobody seems to mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the storyline, but everybody's okay with Kenny Omega anyway. I don't get it, but I'm sure somebody does. They don't have anybody who could add that level. What they're saying is they're banking on the shock factor of Bryan and Punk turning up to be an NWO moment. But that doesn't make any sense.
No, because the NWO, when Scott Hall showed up, no one knew he was showing up, and everyone, still associated him as Razor Ramon. So it looked as if it was a legit invasion going on from the WWF. Whereas, if CM Punk shows up, we know that he's, had nothing but bad things to say about WWE for the last 10 years. So no one's going to buy him as an invading force or whatever.
Right, but also they've already done this AEW TNA kerfuffle thing, which didn't go anywhere. It wasn't an invasion, but it was just kind of it almost started off like it was war against these two companies, and then it stopped.
Well, yeah, I'd argue it didn't even start, really. Kenny Omega went over to Impact, and that was about it.
That was about it, yeah. Tony Khan made a couple of disparaging remarks about how TNA was stupid. And TNA were like, yep, here you go. Here's our championship. Yep,
here's some TV time to slate us every week.
Yep, classic way to get yourselves over. So, yeah, I don't see the NWO comparison whatsoever because there's no point, you know? And that's what gets me, because I always think about this. I'm like, what's the one big storyline they could do that would make people pay attention? Because I thought it was going to be the crossover with Impact. Because I thought if they can do this right, you could actually do something interesting and make people think that it's a shoot. Yeah. Right? Because that's what's going to, I don't know why they haven't figured this out, but surely that's what's going to get people invested in WWE again, or wrestling as a whole again. is when you figure out what was the last thing that got people really fucking psyched. It was CM Punk doing the pipe bomb, right?
Yeah.
And before that, what was it? It was the Nexus wrecking everything.
Mm-hmm.
That shit looked real, and people were like, "What is this? What's happening?" Right? And AEW are so like, they have no heels or faces, and there's no, this or that, and everybody's best friends. Everybody has a good time. So like, because they don't pay attention to the rules so much anyway, how can they pull out a storyline that seems to be so realistic that it gets everybody to pay attention?
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? In my opinion, I feel like it's the realism that's going to get people to pay attention again. Because that's what got people invested with the NWO.
Yeah,
People
but
thought it was real. They were like, something's up here.
do you think it's a harder thing to pull off now, though? Because, obviously with the internet and everything and people being more aware of what's going on behind the scenes than they were in like 96. Isn't that like a harder thing to strive for, that realism?
Yes, it is. But also, given the fact that we've strayed so far away from a lot of that realism, isn't that exactly what they need to bring back? Why did people get bored of the WWE in the 90s? Because it weren't that realistic. They were getting a bit too gimmicky and a bit silly. And hockey players are fucking, here's a zombie, here's fucking whatever. Like it was a strange time. And then once the NWO thing happened, whatever, regardless of the NWO, at some point in the 90s, the WWE realized, WCW or not, that business was down, and they came up with a new, grittier, kind of more realistic approach. Right? And that's what people remember. And I feel like now, again, we're getting into silly territory. They're going to notice business is down, and they're going to do something really big and pull it out of the bag. Right?
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, but again, I don't know what the AEW storyline is going to be, because they played it so gimmicky up to this point that I don't know how they could spin it around,
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see.
That's all we can do.
Hey, really quick, do you want to talk about Zack Ryder, or what do you think?
Yeah, how wild is that?
Well, this is what I'm saying, dude. Doesn't that seem like the most realistic thing is in wrestling?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, talking about real moments, like him getting absolutely, fucking pelted with bottles and pizza cutters and all sorts, apparently. Because, he went and showed up and won a deathmatch title or whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah, but like, fair play to him, right? It's not what I would have done, but it was a ballsy move. He didn't have to do that.
No, but you could say it's got him more buzz than anything he's done in Impact over the last year. So fair play to him.
Easily, right? But that's one of the things that everybody was talking about. People were talking about that at the same time they were talking about Punk and Daniel Bryan. And you got to say, well, fair play, dude.
Yeah.
He I don't know how he does it, man, but this is not the first time that Zack Ryder has been able to get himself over. Right? Fair play to him. And again, WWE passed on him. AEW passed on him. And now I get this. He is the, whatever the fucking champion is, right? Light tube champion. But he beat Nick Gage.
Yeah.
This week. Well, last week.
Yeah, just days away from when Nick Gage is supposed to be wrestling
But he's about
Chris
to
Jericho.
fight Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, good God Almighty, right? Fucking Zack Ryder just beat him.
Yeah.
And then they're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm really pissed off now that Zack Ryder beat me. I'm gonna take my anger out on Jericho." Why didn't you take your anger out on Zack Ryder?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just looks stupid.
To be fair, I don't know if you saw any of the match, but Nick Gage was kind of screwed over in the end. So
I mean, kind of.
But yeah, even still.
Exactly. Like the fucking, a couple of days, less than a week before his big match against Chris Jericho on fucking national TV, right? You'd swear it's been booked by an idiot.
Yeah.
You really would. But yeah, I want to say fair play to Zack Ryder, because like that guy, I don't know, like I said, he finds ways to get himself over, and it's working. The guy's making a lot of money. There's a guy who just sits around fucking openly talking about how he collects uh, wrestling toys and shit like this. He is the exact opposite of those deathmatch guys, and he came in there and they did something real. They worked people. They did pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Unbelievably, in a company that is not well known for its pro wrestling, they swerved a lot of people. Right? That's what I think's interesting. The whole process, them being able to pull out one of the best swerves of the year, arguably, in a company not at all well known for its swerves or its wrestling, has done something really interesting. And like, and again, that was all spread with word of mouth and the internet and shit like this. And this is what we're saying. If AEW can figure out how to do a really good storyline, they'll be on national television. That shit's gonna spread like wildfire if they can figure out how to do it. And if if not just them, but also the fucking WWE are being outplayed by fucking whatever the fuck. Why I don't know why neither of us can remember what this fucking company is called.
Game Changer Wrestling.
Yeah. It's fucking light tube wrestling, right?
Yeah, it's deathmatch wrestling essentially.
Yeah. But if these guys are making chumps out of the WWE and AEW who have national TV, I think that's worth looking at and thinking about. Those guys gotta fucking think about that. And I think both of them need to take a look at Zack Ryder and go, fuck, dude. Maybe we missed a trick. You remember at the beginning of AEW's fucking Cody Rhodes, like, we're not going to hire our friends like Zack Ryder. And they hired everybody except Zack Ryder. Yeah. And now Zack Ryder is one of the more talked about people in wrestling on the internet right now.
Let's not forget as well, Zack Ryder was the guy who, was never in WWE's plans, but he still managed to get super over just by doing his own YouTube show and, putting that out there on his own accord because the company wasn't doing anything with him. And then that sort of forced WWE's hand to give him a small push. And then they turned it around to, pretty much humiliate him and push him back down the card.
Oh, they gave him a huge push. Did you see the push Kane gave him out of the wheelchair down the steps? That was huge.
I guess so, yeah.
As a joke. I like that one. But yeah, you're right. Like, that guy got himself over. You know what I mean?
He always does.
Did that. The people haven't been paying attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
And for a company like AEW that professes so much about letting the wrestlers do what they want to do, how's that worked out for you so far? Because, like I said, the most talked about wrestling angle in a long ass time just happened, and it happened on neither of the big companies.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. Zack Ryder's the man, apparently.
I guess so.
So I guess to answer your question earlier, if I wanted to start my own wrestling company, I'm gonna pick Zack Ryder.
Sounds like a good choice to me.
Smartest man in the business, evidently.
Mm-hmm. Although we should probably call him Matt Cardona.
Yeah, I can't call him Zack Ryder no more. Oops. Yeah, that's gonna be our downfall.
Yeah,
we got too silly with it. Dang it! No, now we owe the WWE lots of money.
Oh well.
Oh well. Well, there we go. We did some chatting. We had some fun. So, is there anything else that you want to say about any of the things we talked about so far? Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, AEW, or Matt Cardona, current Death Light Tube champion? Death Light Tube.
Yeah. No, not really. I think we've pretty much covered everything.
Yeah, dude. I think it's gonna be interesting to see where Matt Cardona goes from here. I'd be very interested to see where that goes because, like we said, very cool gimmick, very cool angle. It worked. And yes, in 6 months' time, in December, where somebody reminded us to do a look back episode. Where we check out the ratings and see if because I feel like they're going to stagnate. I don't think they're going to go up and down too much.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to find a point, stick to it, and you're going to see it very soon. But I like to see them with the extra show,
Yeah.
But that's it. Yeah, we'll be back next week probably with some other kind of piece of shit, right?
I guess so.
Yeah, I guess. We're real pros here. Tony Khan, if you're listening, clearly we're working as hard as some of the other guys in your roster, so sign us up. We're more worth more than Joey Janela, surely.
Yeah, of course we are.
Exactly. Do the right thing and fire Joey Janela. Oh boy. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Make sure to tune in next week. There'll probably be something else that's worth listening to. And we'll see you then. So take it easy, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.